Hello and welcome to the David Frankal Show End of Year Special, the last vestige of a mostly dormant channel that will come back at some point, I promise, as soon as all that pesky life stuff gets out of the way. I want to thank you all for sticking around for yet another year as I've not posted anything. And yeah, it's been a very busy year. I will try and keep the linear narration short so we can get to the fun stuff, and then some more serious stuff, and then some more vague platitudes about the future of the channel. So where am I now? Well, right now I'm in Bordeaux, but that's besides the point. I am at the end of my first term of my final year back at Durham University studying geography, having done my year in industry. I started this year in Manchester, I then split my time between Manchester and York, and then I returned to Durham in the autumn. During that time I've been promoted, I've learned a lot about the rail industry, I've thought a lot about the direction of my future career, I've been to visit some exciting places, including the Arctic Circle, I've worked hard on my dissertation and on launching Enroute, I've spent some quality time with my friends and made some new ones, and now I found myself in something rather wonderful, a new relationship. 2023 was mostly what 2022 was, but a bit better. That long shadow of COVID really does feel like it's receded now. Time is passing, things are happening. Obviously the activity on the channel doesn't quite reflect that. If anything, there's a bit of a negative relationship there, but I'll come back to that. But yeah, stuff's happening, life is happening. It's been by no means a perfect year, but it's been a good one, and I am personally at least optimistic that 2024 is going to be even better. In March, I was seconded into Northern's performance team, working on train running data quality, delay attribution, and performance analysis, giving me the opportunity to expand my year in industry's experience by getting to know the new team in the head office in York, getting more into the nitty-gritty of train performance, and also getting more of an overview of how different parts of the operational railway work with each other and how performance improvements are identified and implemented. I also got to shadow various roles in both Northern and also Network Rail. One of the most exciting days in my placement was when I got to spend a day in the control centre in Manchester, where you can see all that real-time information being processed and minute-to-minute decision-making. The day I was there just so happened to be the day the overhead cables came down in Cheadle-Hulme, which was terrible for the passengers and terrible for everyone in control, but great for me, because I got to actually see what happens when the shit really hits the fan and watch as that information comes in and control makes decisions, and you really start to get to understand why information is sometimes so incomplete and frustrating. Like, one of the things that always frustrates me during disruption, I can understand, stuff happens, like, okay, fair enough, a tree's come down or whatever, but it always really annoys me that the passenger information is always incomplete and coming in drips, and actually you can see the same thing happening within the layers of the company as well. In June, I had the chance to meet other people involved in train performance in other companies at this, in Network Rail's headquarters in Milton Keynes at this sort of performance training day, helping to put the work that I was involved in into a wider context and see how other companies approach the same problems, and better understand the relationship between train operators and Network Rail. Over the summer, my team and our counterparts in Network Rail were involved in a deep dive into service performance and resilience on the Calder Valley, the sort of secondary route from Manchester to Leeds via Hebden Bridge. That's a route I've now gotten to know very well, all of its twists and turns, physically and metaphorically. The point of the exercise was to identify, tangible ways you could improve the service and improve resilience, especially in the next few years. It becomes more important because it's a diversionary route during Transpennine route upgrades on the main route via Huddersfield. For me, it was just a really useful exercise in how to get to know a route, how to get to know the network, and also seeing what the process of a deep dive is. How do you go about analysing a route and pulling out tangible actions and improvements? One of the nice things about being on placement is having that 9 to 5, which was very different to doing university work, where it sort of fills up however much time you give it, and that's although I haven't really used that time on YouTube, I have certainly used that time to just relax a bit more during the weekends, go on walks. I've been on more walks while I was away from Durham with the Durham Hill Walking Society than I've been while I've been at Durham, but mainly for that reason, just because my weekends are mine and I can use them for that kind of thing. It's been nice to just get out and about. I've also been getting plenty of train trips in. In January, I went to Budapest to see family. In March, I went to Lyon to see a university friend who was doing a year abroad there. And over the summer, my dad and I strung together various European cities to meet family friends. We went to Amsterdam, Luxembourg, Lake Como, and then on our way to Budapest, we took in the spectacular Bernina Pass through the Swiss Alps. which included scenes as ridiculous as this. Come September, my placement came to an end, but I wouldn't return to Durham until October. So during September, I had a lot of dissertation fieldwork to do. I'm not going to tell you about my dissertation yet, although when I do, you probably won't be surprised to learn what it's about. I did also have the opportunity to tag along with George Marshall, who very kindly invited me, well, he was invited, and I tagged along with him to go and see HS2's under construction Old Oak Common station, which is probably the biggest construction site in the UK at the moment. This was at a time when, obviously, HS2 was planned to go from London Euston to Manchester Piccadilly, with Old Oak Common a key intermediate station interchanging with Crossrail and Great Western Main Line. It's not been designed as a terminus station, and trying to turn it into one would be a terrible idea. Also in September, I and about 30 other Durham geography students went to visit the Arctic Circle. This is an integrated module, meaning it incorporates both physical and human geography, and the trip itself is attended by a mix of the BSc and BA pathway students. It covers pretty much everything about the Arctic, from its physical aspects, from its climate and from the cryosphere, to its geopolitics and its governance, and even the very conceptual idea of what is the Arctic and what do people think of when you say the Arctic. Specifically, we were staying in the far north of Norway, mainly based in the city of Tromsø. And being me, I decided to give the trip organisers a headache by complicating the logistics by making my own way to Tromsø overland on the train. That trip took me through Brussels, Cologne, Hamburg and Stockholm. Stockholm I spent a day and a half. That's been on my to-visit list for a long time. It is absolutely gorgeous, and I also found a food truck that sells the best herring I will probably ever eat. The next leg was Sleeper Train 94 from Stockholm to Narvik, which is a full 18 and a half hours. You leave Stockholm at about 6 p.m. and arrive in Narvik in the Arctic Circle about 12:30 the next day. The morning of that train, you wake up and you're already within the Arctic Circle, but you've still got a bit of Sweden and the border to cross. That last leg of the journey has to be the best train journey scenery I've ever seen, and that's including the Bernina Pass and a lot of other train miles that I've got in, at least around Europe, over the last few years, so that's saying something. It really was very special. My backlog of trip-based content is so ridiculously long now that otherwise you wouldn't see it for ages, but it's too good not to share, so enjoy a bit of a shortened version here of my train trip to the Arctic.
My name is Richard and my colleague is
And after that, I've been back in Durham. This year I'm only taking modules that I've picked. There are no annoying core modules that you have to do, so I've been enjoying it, and the deadlines have been stressful, but as I said, I've been doing my best to appreciate and enjoy being back in Durham and enjoy the ride. Some other odds and bits from the year, a couple of outings with a group of rail enthusiasts and nerds called The Insanity. We did the Crossrail Taskmaster Challenge in May, which involved running around the Crossrail network, ticking off various weird challenges, which was a lot of fun. And also in November we went out to Saltburn and Whitby, taking up some interesting trains and buses. Durham had its spectacular Lumiere festival in November, where the streets of Durham get lit up with all sorts of interesting illuminated artworks. And then at the beginning of December, we also had a couple of days of really nice snow, which just made Durham look even more lovely than usual. So enjoy another little picture slideshow.
I wish I could just write straight up, you know. Be a lean, mean writing machine.
And that brings us back to the present in some Airbnb host's flat in Bordeaux, where I'm spending a week with my parents because I was too disorganised to get this filmed when I was at home. That's most of what I've been up to this year. Anyway, so 2024, eh? Time, it really is passing. I'll be graduating from university this year, looking for a job, maybe moving back to Manchester. We've got elections coming up, probably in the UK, definitely in the US. The future is at once exciting, frightening, certainly the prospect of Donald Trump coming back is frightening, overall uncertain. Who could possibly predict what this year has in store for us? Well, no one can, but we can certainly try. Which means it must be time to play Place Your Bets. Just me hosting this year. Did try and convince my girlfriend to come and host with me, but she said she didn't want to lose her last ounce of dignity just yet. For anyone uninitiated, the aim of the game is to guess what the answer to the 5 questions will be in a year's time, 31st of December 2024. Everybody gets £10,000 of imaginary money to share out between their answers. And if you want to see who won, well, I've not recorded that video yet, but you can click here. So now let's meet our contestants, those with no dignity left to lose.
Hi, I'm Hadassah. I actually have been on this show before, but if things look a little bit different this time, that is because I've actually moved to university to study medicine, and so I'm filming in student accommodation. And that's the only thing that's changed.
Hello, I am Duncan. You may remember me as the person who used to be in David's videos, but no longer is. That's because I'm a ghost. No. I'm now a sound engineer, and yes, my YouTube channel is basically coming back from the dead, and it's theme park related. So yeah.
Hello everyone, my name's Michael. I'm a long-time friend of David's. I've known him since we were 5 years old, I think. And if you haven't met me before, I'm probably the person that David looks up to the most.
Hello everyone, my name's Gareth Dennis. I'm a rail engineer and writer and the host of RailNet podcast in this place, which you can find on YouTube. Search it, it's very easy to find.
Hello, I am Nick Badley. I have the YouTube channel Nick Badley. I'm also active on Twitter and also Blue Sky, and less actively on Instagram and TikTok.
And hello, I am Nat, occasionally appear in Nick's videos, and I am also on Twitter and Instagram.
Hello, I'm Tom Cowell. You can find me on X, formerly Twitter, at the Tom Cowell. And also got a little personal website, so if we all decide next year that we're finally not going to be using that social network anymore, you can go on tomcowell.me and hopefully there'll be a up-to-date link on there.
I'm Thomas Haynes. I'm a transport planning student and I volunteer with the same organisation as David. In my day job, I am writing railway timetables at the moment.
Hello everybody, my name is Coastway Will, at coastway_Will on Twitter. Unfortunately I have broken the tradition of filming this on the 313 because they have been scrapped.
Hi, my name is Alkinos Canaris. I study civil engineering in Germany. I am originally from Athens and I work in public transport. And you can follow me across all social platforms at Alkinos Canaris. Maybe there is some magic going on here and this appears on the screen somewhere. Where you're going to see my little adventures and probably a good dose of fangirling about Taylor Swift.
Hi, my name's Paul. I'm the secretary of the Class 507 Preservation Society. It's chucking it down, so the rest of this is coming from inside. Well, unfortunately, it was a bit noisy on that train, so I tried doing it here, but you couldn't hear a word. So you join me in the display of ex-equipment from Lime Street Signal Box in Liverpool.
My name is Baron, and I am David's dad.
And I am, of course, David Frankal. Controversially, I'm not asking our usual question of who is going to be the Prime Minister, because frankly it's so bloody obvious. But in a similar vein, I'm going to ask us all to predict what month will the next general election take place.
I think it will be in May, so it's going to all fall on my predictions of the budget being at the right time, and purgatory being at the right time, and or purdah, whatever it's called, and I am going to bet 3,000 on that.
So I think the general election is going to be in May. It's normally in May, so I'm just going to stick with May and I'm going to place 2,000 on it.
This answer is meant to be based on December 2024. I think we'll have had an election before then, so the month is definitely going to be May. I don't know what year though, but I'm going to put quite a lot on this. £507 on the next election being May.
So taking a pun, I'll go with like May or something, but I mean, or it'll be like December. But I think we'll go with May. We're putting
£2,000 on that, as we're not that confident, but
yeah,
it's a 1 in 12 chance, I guess. I mean,
we'll hedge we'll place our bets on it. Yeah.
I am going to say May and actually place £2,000 on that. It is a month when the weather is getting warmer, it's getting sunnier, people are going out, they're having an overall better mood and a better outlook on life, someone could say. So it makes sense that they would think less of all of the failures of the governing party.
Well, there's an awful lot of signs pointing towards May, but I am going to go for September, and for that I'll put 6,000 on.
I'm going to go with May 2024 for £2,500.
It will take place as late as possible, so if it's going to be in 2024, it will take place in December, and I'm putting £4,000 on that. 4 big ones.
I instinctively want to say May, which, as we all know, is actually named after Theresa May, but not a lot of people know that it's shorthand for dismay, which is a bit of pub quiz trivia for you right there. I'm not quite sure what to say. I know statistically I have at least a 1 in 12 chance of being correct, but I think I'm going to put £2,000 on December.
So, in the time that David sent out the questions, to the time that I'm filming this video, I'm not lazy, I strategically waited, I promise. There have been some rumours that have come out that the general election is going to be in May of 2024. So I'm going to bet £7,000 on the election being in May of 2024. There we go. Not cheating.
The next general election is going to be in October 2023. I am going to put £1,500 on that bet.
And I am betting £4,000 on it being in June 2024. Question 2. Who is the leader of the Conservative Party?
I suspect it isn't going to be some total flutter. It will end up with something vaguely sensible. And the only person that's still seriously running, has been running for the last few years, is Penny Ward, so I am going to go with Penny. For that I'll put 3,000.
I think Ben Wallace, I'm going to say. Now, Ben Wallace, he stood down as Defence Secretary, I think last year, and he said that he wasn't going to run again because his constituency is being done away with because of border changes. However, I think that that was a lie, and he was actually just wanting to get away from the negativity of the Conservative Party, and will actually see an opportunity for himself to come back in, win some sort of by-election or an election of sorts, and become an MP again, and then win leadership. I think he can score a lot of points with his track record on Ukraine. He has not been part of many controversies in the Tory party over the past 4 years, so I think that that's probably the best bet that the Tories have. If I was a Conservative, that's who I would vote for to be the leader of our party. So yeah, Ben Wallace for that one. I'm going to bet £1,000 on that answer because I'm relatively confident with it.
I think that Suella Braverman is actually a person with a pretty decent chance of getting the job. I will be betting just £1,000 on this one, however, because I'm not sure.
My political knowledge is very low, by the way, but I'm sort of hedging as sort of like, what if David Cameron makes like a freak return? It's very, very unlikely. We're only putting like £1,000 on this one.
I think the Tories will have Penny Mordaunt. They'll go in a different direction and hope it actually works this time. And I am going to bet just 1,000 on that, playing it safe, you know.
At the end of December 2024, the Tories have had an eventful year. They've lost a general election. I am going to put £3,500 on Rishi Sunak still being the leader, but not for much longer, as there is a leadership election currently underway, and either Suella Braverman or Kemi Badenoch is leading the polls.
It's still Sunak. There's no one else they can find to replace him.
It is going to be Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson, £3,000. Put it there.
The leader of the Conservative Party, I don't know. I reckon they're going to destroy themselves next year. I'm not going to spend a lot on this. I'm going to spend £507. See what I did there. It might be Suella. It probably will be her because they're just going to implode and stuff.
I'm going to put £3,000 on Rishi Sunak.
I'm going to go with Kemi Badenoch for £2,000.
And I'm putting £2,000 on the new Gaffmeister himself, the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, if he can avoid putting his foot in it every 2 weeks for at least the next few months. Question 3. Which politician or celebrity, can be from anywhere in the world, has just made a complete arse out of themselves, and how?
I am going to put £2,000 on Andrew Haynes, chair of Network Rail, and he is going to publicly claim that a bridge or tunnel is in perfect condition less than a week before the bridge or tunnel in question promptly collapses.
I think I'm going to go with Elon Musk. Maybe that's slightly cheating given the number of controversies that we've had this year. So I'll be a bit more specific. I think that we'll see the Vegas loop either close or have some sort of major incident that will be reasonably controversial. And I'm going to go with £1,000 on that one.
It's Sunak again. This time I'm going to go by hosting, I don't know, a roundtable event with Count Dankula, you know, the Hitler salute dog guy. I'm putting £1,000 on that.
So I'm going to go down the celebrity route because we have enough politics already. And I'm going to say Stephen Mulhern. He is hosting Dancing on Ice. Something's going to go wrong. He's going to fall flat on his face on the ice like Gemma Collins did. And I'm going to place £2,000 on that.
I have no idea. I'm going to put £5.07 on it being someone from some... I don't know. I don't do that. Victoria Coren Mitchell.
In 2023, we've obviously seen that there's been a trend of celebrities taking lump sums of money from countries which have a subpar human rights record, and I think that's going to continue into 2024. So my prediction is footballer commentator Michael Owen is going to take upwards of £500,000 to do a really cringy tourism ad for Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Yemen, maybe. £1,000 on Michael Owen.
His name is Keir Starmer. He is totally an advocate for trans rights, and he's going to put a funny little tweet saying that he's still with trans people, and then he's going to help bring down a bill which is designed to stop and completely ban and make illegal transgender conversion therapy. And I am going to bet a solid £3,000 on that, and trans rights are human rights, by the way, in case you weren't aware.
Which politician or celebrity has just made a complete arse out of themselves, and how?
Which celebrity's made an arse out of themselves? Yeah, I was thinking maybe... Because I can really think of somebody who would, like, be insulting or whatever, like, you know, Gordon Ramsay. And I'm thinking, I can imagine it happening where, like, Gordon Ramsay will, you know, do his usual, like, insulting thing. And he'll say something insulting to... For example, like a transgender person, and, you know, Twitter people being Twitter people will take it all out of context and completely blow it out of proportion. And that's just something I can really see happening. So we've put, how much on that? Another
£1,000.
Another £1,000 on that.
When I heard celebrity, I thought about the Kardashians, because they seem to be entering a flop era of some sorts and losing their influence, which is weird to say for what is basically America's royal family at this point. However, I have to name just one person, and the personal name is Kylie Jenner. Now, how will that start? I'm not sure. It could be bad products, or stolen business ideas, or petty little drama. And therefore, I'm just placing £1,500 on this one.
I'm going to put £2,000 on Rishi Sunak saying something really distasteful about immigrants or immigration policy.
I'm going to go with Suella Braverman, who has downsized her Rwanda division to helicopters. So she's going to send a helicopter to Rwanda. 75 pence.
I predict that Joe Biden, having just won the election, will accidentally congratulate Trump on winning the election. And I'm putting £1,000 on that. Question 4. What has been the stupidest cause of train delays on the UK rail network this year? This question is obviously slightly inspired by my placement year experience. I came across a couple of funny ones. Quite recently there was a very funny incident where a driver reported to the signaller that there was smoke coming from a train, and the signaller stopped the other train, did some investigation, and worked out that the other train was in fact the Flying Scotsman steam locomotive. Train delays get caused by all sorts of things, very often passengers themselves, occasionally snakes, or cats, or even Durham University students who think it's a great idea to transport their entire collection of houseplants home on the train. So what is going to be the stupidest cause of train delays next year?
Now I'm going to bet that an Intercity 225 breaks down on the East Coast Main Line, and the Thunderbird that is meant to rescue it also fails, and I am going to bet 2,000 on that.
You know, given the cost of living crisis, I'm betting that somebody is going to steal some part of like a signal box or something, possibly wires or internal parts. Well, whether they use it to sell online or just for the fun of it. But, well, obviously that's going to cause delays, and I think that's the stupidest reason, and we're putting £4,000 on that.
I think it's going to be hard-boiled eggs. And allow me to elaborate. This has maybe happened in Britain at some point. It has happened in Germany, I believe. Basically, someone brings in hard-boiled eggs in the train to eat, and they smell so bad, the odor is so foul, that someone either pulls the emergency brake or the police are being called. And all of those things, of course, cause delays. And for that, I'm actually going to place £2,500.
I'm putting a lot of money on this. £3,910.93. And this is going to be, a train is going to be delayed due to a failure of the signalling system due to a solar flare caused by NASA's Parker probe, which apparently is going to be going near the sun this time next year.
I'm going to put £1,000 on an animal being on the railway track, and it either can't be moved or people don't want to move it. Something to do with an animal.
I'm going to say a tunnel flooding, a tunnel that shouldn't flooding. I'm going to place £2,000 on that.
I'm going to go with swans on the line, but let's go with somewhere high impact, like a major terminal station throat, to cause lots of inconvenience and probably hit during rush hour. And I'm going to go for £1,500 on that one.
I am going to put £2,000 on one of the TOCs forgetting to publish their timetable for a given week, and therefore no trains run on their network for at least a day.
Not building HS2. I'll go for £2,000.
It's Sunak again, continuing his general defunding of the railways, putting another £1,000 on that.
Now, I think next year they're going to outlaw fox hunting, right? And I think that there's going to be massive protests from the fox hunting lobby, and they're going to turn out in droves at stations throughout the country and come onto the platform and actually stop the trains from leaving, all because they can't shoot poor little foxes in the face. And I'm going to say 500 for the fox hunting.
I'm putting £1,000 on a former rail minister falling into the gap between the train and the platform and having to be rescued. And question 5, what is the latest useless, performative, environmental/greenwashing gesture?
Question 5, it's funny, I actually recommended this question as a joke, and now it's actually in the question bank. I have no idea what to say. But I'm going to put £2,000 on some sort of ineffective carbon offsetting or carbon capture technology.
So, the government's latest greenwashing gesture is that they have committed to investing in wireless electrification, and there will be pretty much weekly reminders that, yes, this is most definitely different to battery trains. I'm going to put £1,000 on that.
They're painting all the new oil rigs that they've just awarded the contract to build, and they're painting them green. Literal greenwashing. That's. I'm putting £1,000 on that one. That's my answers. Cheers, everyone.
All government cars are going to be electric.
For how much? For how much? Have you been keeping track?
Whatever I've got left, £999.25p.
So I'm going to say BBC trying to go carbon neutral just by paying for carbon offsets, which I've kind of seen that aren't that good, really. But yeah, I'm going to say that and put £1,000.
Now, I'm not completely up to date with the whole green stuff. All I know is that HS2 should have been built in full, but, you know, whatever. And I am going to say that a much heavier congestion charge, or even a ULEZ type charge, is going to be put onto the Dartford crossings. And I am going to bet just 1,000 on this.
I think it's going to be construction emissions. And I am placing £3,000 on that. Now, construction emissions are actually a pretty big topic. The CO2 and other polluting gas emissions from the construction sector, from concrete production alone, are enormous and should definitely be addressed. However, I do see them becoming a NIMBY talking point this year. NIMBYs are going to use it to push back against useful infrastructure like railway lines, bike lanes, bus lanes, and so on.
Well, I reckon at this point, because of all the paper that's being used, cutting all down these trees for tickets for train, bus, and all this travel, they're just going to say, no more paper, everything's online, which will screw over a lot of people, especially the people who rely on these tickets. And considering all this ticket office closure, that
put it under the guise of modernisation or whatever.
Yeah, no more tickets, no more paper tickets, all online.
Yeah, that'll probably happen at some point. So we're putting another £2,000 on that one. Yeah.
I think the answer is going to be Greenpeace is going to come back into the news. The reason is they're going to make an appeal for polar bears, right? Because obviously global warming, polar bears are going to go extinct. What they're going to do is they're going to raise money for an expedition to the Arctic Circle to build habitats for polar bears. And while they're digging out caves for polar bears to hibernate in, they're going to accidentally chop off a massive bit of ice into the ocean and cause sea level to rise by 1 millimeter, right? But it's going to cause crazy environmental issues. And £500 on the Greenpeace polar bear bonanza.
No idea again, so £507 again on the elimination of diesel trains from the network.
I think we're going to see sustainable aviation fuel this year be pushed really hard by airlines in particular, in terms of the upsell that they offer and trying to push towards consumers paying for further development in that. But I don't actually think we're going to see any real movement in that actually improving the environmental credentials of the airline and aviation industry generally. And I'll do that one for £3,000.
I think it's going to be electric cars or those little driverless pods or something like that, and sort of performatively using them for short journeys, perhaps around Westminster. Maybe we'll see the Prime Minister use it to get from Downing Street to the Houses of Parliament, or by delegates getting around COP29. And the point is it's going to be for short, unnecessary journeys that at least us able-bodied folk could have made easily on foot, but making a big show out of using these little electric cars because they're renewable powered and therefore they are green. And I'm putting £2,000 on that. Alright, so just a couple of other things to cover. Firstly, Harry and I have relaunched Sustainable Transport Midlands into Enroute, a transport research and innovation group. Essentially, we've taken a lot of the work, the company structure, and the ideas that we've built up over the last year and a half and put it into a new format with a slightly different aim. This is something that I think, given our team size and experience, we're more able to build up and effectively become a more effective vehicle to achieve the same aim, which is obviously promotion of sustainable transport investment. It's something we're hoping to expand and build up over the next year or two, and we're looking for people to join us. So if you're interested in transport and you potentially want to get involved in things like writing reports and research, come and join us, or in any case, click on the link in the description to check out our website and find out more, where you can also find a page on joining us and volunteering. It is all volunteering, I should stress. Harry and I both do it alongside full-time degrees and jobs and such. All right, so now on to some slightly more serious discussions. So, seeing as I'm not doing trade news anymore, that's finished, and obviously I've not posted anything on here since last year, I do want to take a bit of time to talk about my favourite industry, the rail industry. Now, of course, this time last year, as I was speaking to you, I was under the employment of a train operating company, which meant there were clauses in my contract specifically telling me that I'm not allowed to comment on contentious issues or criticise other train operators or Network Rail, which is fair enough, that's part of the package. Now I'm slightly more free, but even now, you know, as I'm putting in applications for future job applications, I'm obviously going to be very conscious of what I say. But yeah, this last year and a half has made me very aware and very conscious of the immense privilege I've had up until now as a disgruntled school child to just be able to kind of say whatever I want and mouth off and criticise everyone I want without being accountable to anyone. And as I grow up and as I want to pursue a career in the rail industry, you know, part of the deal there, part of that is giving up that freedom, essentially. But at the same time, I am a person who cares very deeply about politics, about environment, about transport justice. You know, I maintain that this stuff matters and is important, and it is important to speak out and talk about contentious issues. I think that is perpetually going to be a challenge for me, you know, especially under this government, but also under a potential future Labour government as well. And that obviously includes dealing with the challenge of how and what to say here on this channel in whatever format that takes. Whereas in the past, as I said, I'd been pretty much at liberty to say whatever I want without any consequences and give my opinion on anything and everything, despite paradoxically the fact that I know and understand a lot more now than I did then. I maintain that all of this stuff matters. Getting passengers and freight from A to B matters. Modal shift matters. Decarbonisation matters. Having a vision for what the UK transport network should be and should look like and should do in the future matters. At the end of the day, to borrow a phrase, rail transport is a good thing. But what we've seen over the last year and a half really is a bit of a war on two fronts on the railway in terms of its day-to-day running and subsidy and in terms of its long-term investment. And in both, one side of that has been the UK government. We had Boris Johnson, who did at least pretend to be enthusiastic about railways, but I don't think really cared that very much. And now we've got Rishi Sunak, who cares even less and doesn't care at all about hiding it. So on the one front, we've seen, this constant battle over the day-to-day operation and cost-cutting, and this constant narrative that, COVID has taken away demand, it's more important than ever to cut costs to make funding the railway sustainable. Now, just a month ago, the RMT union and train operators came to an agreement that brought to an end a raging industrial dispute that's been going on since June 2022. During that time, and there's also been strike action with ASLEF, the drivers' union, as well, during that time we've pretty much had a total month, I think, of days in which there have been very few or no train services at all operating on the network. And that's incredibly frustrating, especially someone who worked in a day job in terms of looking after minutes of train delays, but then having entire days of no services whatsoever, which was entirely out of our control. It was very, very frustrating, because every day you don't run trains, you lose revenue on that day, obviously, but you don't just lose revenue on that day, you lose passengers in the long run, because when passengers can't rely on the rail network to get them where they need to go, they start to seek alternatives. Sometimes they even move house or move jobs. Without uncritically taking one side or another on the dispute itself, I can't help but think, would it not have just been so much easier, so much cheaper and better for the industry if they'd just given the workers the pay rise they were always going to get eventually back in June 2022 and just avoided all of this hurt and all of this damage? I mean, that's damage as I said, to industry revenue, to revenue in the long term, to growth, to decarbonisation, to the relationship between train operators and passengers, and to the relationship between train operators and their frontline workers. At the end of the day, it is the frontline workers who run the trains. They look after the trains, they look after the infrastructure. You cannot run, it is an industry that is held together by goodwill and parcel tape, and you can't run it without the support of your frontline workers. Bernina Express have certainly learned that the hard way. And the most frustrating thing of all is that I think most people in the rail industry understand this perfectly well, but as an industry right now we're so beholden to the government, to the politicians, that even though there's this fractured, fragmented industry structure, individuals within the rail industry are not actually empowered to speak out or say anything outside of government line at all, let alone make their own, set their own policy or make their own agreements, deals with the unions, for example. Instead, the industry wastes its time chasing its own tail over silly things like proposals to close every ticket office in the UK, which was never going to work and was always a stupid idea. And what ends up happening is that the industry damages its reputation when it puts out bad, poorly thought out proposals. The public widely rejects them, and then the same government who told the industry to make the proposals in the first place then turns around and says, whoa, this is a terrible idea, we're not doing it. The rail industry then takes all of the flack for that. But what the ticket office fiasco does show, again to borrow a phrase, is that the public still care, as they should, as people in the rail industry should. We should complain when things aren't good enough, when the main intercity train operator in the north of England is cancelling a quarter of its trains, short-forming the rest of them, and then cuts its timetable to the lowest frequency between the two biggest cities in the north of England that we've seen for decades. People should complain about that because it's not good enough. And obviously by that I don't mean hurl abuse at frontline rail workers who are doing their best to run the service under challenging conditions. I'm also not saying hurl abuse at the managing director. What I'm saying is we should complain and we should recognise that there are also structural factors underlying these issues, and that obviously brings me back to the politics and the long-term investment. Which brings me to Network North, the worst rail plan that has ever been put to paper, almost certainly drawn up in a blind panic by a couple of special advisors at 2 a.m. in the Manchester hotel room. Just in time for Rishi Sunak to read it out to the Conservative Party at their conference the next morning. Now you might notice I sort of missed the boat on doing like a full in-depth explainer of Network North like I did for the integrated rail plan a couple of years ago. Part of the reason has just been I've been very busy, and part of the reason is also because I'm tired. I spent a lot of time picking over the details of the integrated rail plan just for it to get superseded 2 years later by Network North, and Network North will probably get superseded and made redundant in a year or two by something else. And it's also just not coherent. I mean, the integrated rail plan, for all its faults, had a vision. It wasn't a very good vision, but it did sort of paint a picture. Network North is more just a loose series of statements that are just because we said so. We're cancelling HS2 to Manchester and we're freeing up £8 billion of funding for filling in potholes because we say so. All of the rail-based schemes that are listed in the document are not actually costed or really promised. They all still need to go through the same long and arduous planning and approval process that they would have to anyway, and under this government, which has probably less than a year in office, none of them are going to get started anyway, so it's not really worth the paper it's written on. I mean, Network Rail weren't even consulted on the details that were contained within it. And that's assuming any of the rail promises in there survive subsequent revisions after 24 hours, like the Leamside line didn't. The only thing of substance in Network North is what's not there, which is HS2 to Manchester, and the full-size station in Euston that is needed to enable any future extensions of HS2, such as the eastern leg if it ever gets reinstated. And with the promise of also selling off the land reserved for HS2 between Birmingham and Crewe, it is really starting to look like, to quote Gareth Dennis here, a scorched earth strategy that is designed purely just to make the next, probably Labour government's job harder. That's a Labour government which may or may not reinstate those plans. We don't know what they're going to do either. But if they do, they will find that the costs have suddenly gone substantially up. All of this is supposedly justified as, oh, COVID has changed travel patterns, but it's nonsense. The demand for the rail network is there. Demand for leisure travel is higher than it's ever been. And the only operators that are still reporting substantially lower passenger numbers than they were before COVID, like Bernina Express, are mainly reporting them because they haven't been running the service they were running before COVID. You can't carry more passengers if you're not running trains. And even then, we should be implementing policies to actively try and drive up passenger numbers anyway, because we should want modal shift to rail from cars and planes. I could go on and on and on about Network North, and maybe I will in another video. But that's all I will say for now, and hopefully nothing I've said has been too outrageous. I hope I've not burned too many bridges by saying that. Please give me a job. But I would just say my key point is overall is that this stuff matters, it's important, and it is important where we can to speak out about it and complain when things are not good enough. Because at the end of the day, it's our railway. I want to say a couple of words on Israel and Palestine. This is a very difficult thing to talk about. It's a difficult thing to say the right things about. It's messy. I'm not detached from it, and whatever anybody says is going to offend somebody, is going to be controversial to somebody. I've got friends and family living there, and I've got friends and family who've got friends and family living there, and some of those people are serving in the IDF. That's just a reality of who I am. So yeah, I'm not detached from this. It's not just something that's happening in a faraway country that I can just ignore. I think from one side, it's very easy to fall into a bit of a retrenched position and say, it's a war that's going on, park your politics, we'll talk about those later. It's far too easy to ignore the suffering of the Palestinian people, the death toll and the displacement in the Gaza Strip, the settler violence in the West Bank, and the subjugation, the occupation of the Palestinian people and of Palestinian land that has been going on for decades, or to acknowledge all of that, but say it's everybody else's fault and not Israel's. And on the other hand, many people who don't have any personal connection to either, or do have a personal connection to Palestine and not Israel, or who are just generally and rightly horrified by what's going on, who believe and argue for a Palestinian state, as I do, to also take a very retrenched position and ignore and not acknowledge, the suffering of Israelis who lost friends and family on the 7th of October, or who have friends and family who are still being held hostage, or to just not acknowledge what Israel is and what it means to Jews all over the world, or to ignore and not feel the real fear that many Jews across the world are feeling at the moment. It's a bitter and hopeless conflict that it's hard to see an end to at the moment, and it's something that I've always been very conflicted about personally. Sometimes it just feels easiest to just say nothing about it. But I think we should talk about it. I think it's important to talk about it, not because any of us can realistically hope to influence the events themselves, but because I think it's important. If you talk about it, then your friends and your family and your peers will be more able to talk about it, and more able perhaps to recognise the complexity and the multiplicity of it without taking away from recognising abject horror and injustice that is being done. And ultimately, because hopefully we can keep our faith in a better future, a better outcome, a two-state solution, or some other particular resolution that involves ultimately Israelis and Palestinians living in peace, side by side. It might feel harder than ever to imagine such a future at the moment, but that's also why it's more important than ever before to imagine and argue for that future. On reflection, I did actually want to add a couple of points to that. Firstly, when I say it's too easy to fall into that sort of simplistic narrative on either side, I'm obviously not saying that is what the majority or all of people on either side of the argument are doing all the time. Obviously, most people do understand those nuances, but it is, nevertheless, my point is it is too easy to fall into that sometimes, and it is something that any of us could be vulnerable to doing. Secondly, I wanted to add that there's an awful lot of misinformation flying about at all times, on all sides, so especially if you're the kind of person like me who's always on Twitter, I would say resist the temptation to react to everything minute to minute, because it's so difficult to actually know and to verify what is going on the ground, and there's a lot of misinformation, so be careful and don't instantly believe everything you read on the internet. And finally, notwithstanding what I said before, for those of us who, like myself, are in the UK and have the privilege of being at least physically far away from it all, just be kind, just be empathetic as much as you can, and don't waste your time arguing with people whose minds you're not going to change and confronting people, and try and find common ground, and yeah, just be kind. I can already tell the comments section is going to be a horror show, which sort of proves my point. But anyway, I also said I was going to talk a bit about the future of this channel and what it's for and what I'm going to do with it. I do occasionally get asked, am I going to start uploading again? And the answer is pretty much the same as it was last year. Yes, 100% yes, but I haven't decided when, and I haven't 100% decided what that's going to look like just yet. So there are two things, ultimately, that are at play here. Firstly, since COVID receded and I started actually being a university student, I found it harder than ever to make time to work on the channel. And that's not necessarily the same thing as not having time. It's not just a simple case of how many hours there are in the day. It's also about motivation and balancing screen time and non-screen time. You know, it's very different from when I was in school and coming home from school and working on it in the evenings and the weekends to now, either been working in an office job or working at university. You know, I do need my off time, and there's a certain amount of time that I can spend on other things, which, you know, there's also other things that have been competing for that same time and energy, like my dissertation. There just quite simply isn't an obvious space for reviving the channel, and the fact that it does now need to be revived makes that harder because it makes it feel like a bigger task. And the second thing is that I'm not going to go back to what I was doing before, for three reasons. One, the content that I've been doing in the past has been sort of quite descriptive, a lot of me just chucking everything I come across onto the internet and providing a bit of description and explanation. And at some point, I think I've just stopped finding that as interesting and rewarding as I used to. Secondly, because I physically can't do what I used to do, which was just kind of take everything that I came across and was exposed to that I found interesting and package it up into a video, because there's just so much more stuff now that I've been working in the industry for the year, or from studying transport as a field. There's just too much stuff, not to mention some of it is also can't be shared. I just wouldn't be able to ever stay on top. And thirdly, because as I said, I'm just not at liberty to narrate and provide my personal opinions on anything and everything anymore. All of that means ultimately the content needs to grow up with me. It will need to be more curated, and I want it to be more analytical, more thematic, more interesting. A lot of that also applies to the non-rail stuff. I mean, the David Frankal show started off as sort of being like this sort of little bit of everything that's going on in my life and a bit of everything in politics, and I just don't think that's really fit for purpose anymore, because I don't want to talk about everything that's going on in my life at the moment, and also trying to cover everything that's going on in politics is exhausting. I mean, I basically did that during like 2019 and all of the sort of peak Brexit Parliament chaos, and that was just insane. I can't keep doing that. And also with train news not being a thing anymore, I'm going to bring back some of that rail commentary into this, so that separation of non-rail and rail stuff is now a bit redundant. And also the name, the David Frankal show, I mean, it just doesn't hold up. It started to feel a bit narcissistic at the age of 22, going around talking about the David Frankal show, so it'll need a new name as well, and just a bit of a fundamental rethink. I mean, I think this sort of reflective end-of-year format that I've been doing this last couple of years kind of works, but if I am going to start doing this more frequently than that, it will need a little bit of a rethink, I think. So in short, yes, the channel will come back. It's not going to be before May at the very earliest, once I've handed my dissertation in, and also I want to take my time and think about what it is exactly that I'm bringing back, what the channel's going to be, because it's not going to be what it was before. It's going to be something new, something a bit more mature and more interesting. As always, I'm keen to know what you think, so please do feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And again, thank you for sticking around. I hope you stick around some more, and I'd like to wish all of you a very lovely 2024.